Hi, I'd like to welcome everybody to the College of Fine Arts first town hall of fall 2021. Today we are going to be talking about campus safety, and we are most fortunate to have with us Sergeant Tony Summerlin, who is going to talk about all things safety here at UNLV. And with us, we are also lucky to have Dean Nancy Usher. So before we before we get started with Sergeant Summerlin, I'd like to give Dean Usher a moment to say hello.
Julie, thank you so much for setting up this wonderful opportunity, this town hall and I know Ashley and Stacy and Leanne were also on your team, and others, our chairs and directors and our faculty are also extremely interested in becoming more knowledgeable on behalf of our students and faculty and staff about how we can practice the best ideas that we can have, keeping all of us safe and also being compassionate and having empathy for people on campus who are not students and faculty and staff. And I want to thank Sergeant Summerlin very much on behalf of the college for being with us to help us understand better how we can work together to make this campus as safe as it can possibly be, and a place where we can all feel comfortable celebrating the education that we offer to our students. Thank you to all of you for being here. It's going to be a very informative and exhilarating session. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dean Usher. So we'll turn the floor over right now to Sergeant Summerlin.
Okay, good. Well, good afternoon. I'm Sergeant Summerlin. I work for University Police Services. I wear a couple different hats here, so I won't go through that long laundry list, otherwise that might eat up the whole hour. But part of what I do here is I am responsible for our HOPE unit, which is our Homeless Outreach Proactive Engagement Unit, as well as our Res Life team. So I oversee the officers that are responsible on both of those teams, and we spend a lot of time being proactive within the community and the community around us. So we deal with affiliates like yourself. All of those that are on this call are considered affiliates, anybody that's a faculty, staff member, or a student. But we also deal with our community members that are non-affiliates that maybe have no association with any of our universities. And we interact with them quite frequently and on a regular basis because all of our properties are state-owned, which means that they're open to the public. You don't see fences around any of our campuses. They're very welcoming. We have beautiful courtyard areas and gorgeous walks through the middle of campus. Most of our officers like to spend time in the middle of campus because that's where the most shade's at, especially in the summertime. But when we talk a little bit about safety and just some of the things that we're doing, here at UPD, we're actually gearing up for what's called a safety walk, and it's something that we provide to all the campuses. And what we do is we wait until it's the evening hours, typically during fall, so right after the fall semester starts, and we go around in different groups and we walk through the campus and we kind of look for areas that may need extra lighting. Maybe we need bushes that need to be trimmed back in certain areas. Maybe there's a hazard that we aren't aware of or facilities isn't aware of. And so we get all these different groups and these different people across campus that are very much into safety, the safety of our students, the safety of our faculty and staff members. And so we do these things quite frequently. So we're actually getting ready to do our safety walk on the UNLV campus here in just a couple of weeks. So I'm really looking forward to that because I'll be a part of that. Another thing that that I like to do and point out, and I'll leave this open for questions as well, because I want to hear if there's any questions or things that I could answer, but I'm really big on just being aware of your surroundings as you're walking through campus, whether it's broad daylight or it's in the evening hours, just being very aware of the campus community, being aware of your surroundings, watching where you're walking, watching the folks that are moving around you, and then just being able to assist as needed. A lot of the calls for service that we get are because folks like you have noticed something, and then you've been able to call our dispatch and point that out to us, and we've been able to respond accordingly and either help to, provide aid or to assist folks in whatever it is that they need. So we spend a lot of time doing that. So being very much aware of your surroundings is one of the things that I truly stress and try to point out the importance of, especially with our younger students on campus. We like to see a lot of them walking around in their cell phones as they're texting and calling, but I try to get you guys to at least be mindful that as you're walking and texting, make sure that you're glancing up and looking around as you're doing that as well. So that way you might see something, you might be able to offer aid, or you might be able to help somebody in need, whether it's because they tripped and fell or because you see something that just doesn't look right. We respond to all of those calls. So do you guys actually have any questions for me, or things that you're curious about that UPD does that's different than other agencies, or things that we actually do here on campus?
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your service. We thank all the university police here because it is such a hard, we're on an urban campus, so it's a very difficult job, I know. I had a question on their cameras around the campus. I'm over at HFA. I've noticed we have a few here, but I've been here for a few years, and some of those cameras were put in after 9/11, so I don't know how old they are. I don't know if they're working. What is the status of like video surveillance? I know Cottage Grove has a number of the cameras in them, but I was just curious.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So I can't tell you which cameras have been changed out. Unfortunately, I don't sit on the IT team, but I can tell you that all of our cameras are functioning, and the ones that have reached their lifespan, they do get changed out periodically. So that's something that our IT internal department does. They work a lot with facilities, as well as the director of our RT and communications department, Mark Sakurada, and he goes around and he makes sure all those cameras are functioning. Now, UPD does have access to those cameras, but our officers aren't monitoring them. That's something that our detectives and dispatch will do. As our officers, their main responsibility is to be visible to the campus, whether that's on bike patrol, foot patrol, or in vehicles. But we do have access to those cameras, and they've actually come in handy when we've worked on a couple cases. We actually just had a stolen vehicle case that just happened earlier this morning, and our detectives were able to get really good video footage of both the subject and the vehicle, and be able to assist in that matter. So those cameras are functioning and working, and we do have them all over campus. We also have the red call boxes, the emergency phones. Those also have cameras on them that our dispatch can access and see the camera system in there. So if there's a caller, if someone pushes the button, the dispatcher is able to not only communicate with the person that pushes those buttons, but they can also see them as well.
I have actually a follow-up question on that as well, if it would be possible.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Kim. I work in HFA as well, but on the other side of HFA for the Department of Art. How are the spaces identified where those cameras are installed? We have a building, Grant Hall, which is on the Maryland-facing side, and that particular building does not have any cameras. And I
Okay.
was just curious how those particular resources were allocated.
That's actually not something done by UPD. It's usually first started with the department chairs that either are looking to include cameras in their areas for specific reasons, or they'll reach out to facilities and find out what that capability is. And then obviously there has to be some like testing to see where we can hardwire those into. So that's a little bit outside of my area of expertise on how to actually get the camera systems installed and things like that, but that would be a better question for Mark. And I can get you his contact information. I can throw it into the chat for you, and that way you're able to email with him. He would be able to better assist you in answering questions about specific areas that cameras are located, and if you wanted to either get a safety walkthrough or an ad of cameras, Mark would handle everything camera or IT related. So I'll throw his name and his email address up in the chat for you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. What other questions can I answer for you guys?
Well, can you give us an overview of Hope and how it works, and like what your role in it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So Hope actually is the Homeless Outreach Proactive Engagement Unit. It was started back in 2019 by Director Adam Garcia. And the reason why it was started is, well, there's definitely a need for it. So it is considered home. We do interact with the homeless folks, thank you, in and around our campus. But what the main function is getting those folks, whether they are affiliates or non-affiliates, to resources that are available to them in and around the Valley. And the way that works is simply with our non-affiliates is our officers making contact with these folks. So our officers are very proactive when we see individuals that are residentially challenged or that may need resources. Maybe it's food insecurity or shelter insecurity. And so we're able to get them to available resources in and around the Valley. So we've created partnerships with a lot of folks here within the middle of the Valley, but as well as North Las Vegas and Henderson, because we have properties out in those areas as well. And we worked really, really close with Help of Southern Nevada, Mojave Mental Health, and then Crossroads. And then we also work with a community center that's just not too far from the UNLV campus. It's just north of UNLV campus on the other side of Flamingo, which is called the Impact Center. And what we do is we just kind of help connect people to those resources and get them available resources that either maybe they don't know about or they are having a really hard time getting to that. So the way that I function within the Hope unit is I actually oversee the entire unit as the sergeant. So I kind of helped build it from the ground up. I was assigned to the unit at its very baby steps when it was in its creation back in 2019. And I've seen it grow and expand since then. We're actually working with a couple different partners here around the Valley, and we work very closely with Metro's HOT team, which is their homeless outreach team, and their COP team, which is their community outreach policing team. So similar to what we do, but they just have two different units that do the same function that our one unit does. We're a much smaller agency, and since we're a little smaller than Metro, them being 4,000 plus officers and us only having well under 100, we partner with them on a lot of different cleanups around the Valley. We just recently did one. I don't know if any of you were around campus at that time, but we did one about a week ago over at the Bank of America. That's just right over here on Maryland Parkway. We started to see an influx in our residentially challenged folks that were setting up tents and different types of sleeping quarters. And so we went over there and did some outreach with those folks. We connected them with resources. We got most of them on the housing list. And then we were able to work with Bank of America to make sure that their property was secure and safe. And then also there's an enforcement piece that comes outside of that, which officers who are not a part of the Hope unit would then do enforcement. So all of my officers that work on the Hope unit are still sworn law enforcement officers, just like everybody else in the Valley. The only difference is when they're operating as a resource officer, they don't do any type of enforcement. And that's to make sure that we're operating under the Ninth Circuit Court and we're abiding by the laws and the regulations here in the state.
May I ask how big the Hope unit is and how active it is?
Yeah, so it's very, very active. We currently have 3 officers that sit on the Hope unit, and they are on opposite shifts. So that way we can kind of capitalize on the folks that we're seeing on both sides. We work on rotating shift squads right now. So we have a 3-4 split schedule. And so with that, in order to capitalize, making sure that we had officers that are a part of the outreach team available to the folks that need us available to them, we have officers that sit on both our A squad and our B squad. We also partnered with the School of Social Work. So we actually have a School of Social Work student that's doing her practicum with us. And so she goes out with our Hope unit officers and makes contact with a lot of these individuals, but the unit is very proactive. And all of our officers actually can operate in the same function. We all carry resource cards with us. So as new officers joined UPD and they are hired on, part of their training is in resource driven because we are a community oriented police department. And so they get it's about a 4-hour session on community policing, about the Hope unit and about the Res Life unit and what it is we do for our campus communities. So we're very active in that sense, and all of our officers are able to make these connections and these contacts. It's just our Hope unit operates slightly differently as they are able to operate in this capacity all the time on their shift or just part of their shift, depending on what the needs for calls for service are that day.
Thank you very much.
So I have a question regarding that. You said when you're acting as resource officers, you're under the Ninth Circuit. Did I hear that correctly? Okay,
Yes,
can
ma'am.
you explain what that means, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Ninth Circuit Court is the court that Nevada sits under. So we kind of follow a lot of the laws and rules that you'll see California kind of putting out. And so what the Ninth Circuit Court does is they dictate how we can operate in certain functions. So one of the main things that they do for resource officers is when we're in the capacity of providing resources to community members, we aren't allowed to do enforcement at the same time. And the reason for that is think of it in the way as if an officer came to you in your time of need and you needed help, and at the same time we then went ahead and gave you a citation or put you in handcuffs, it
Right.
almost confuses that individual. Is, are we offering them help, or are we there to enforce the laws? And so one of the things that the Hope Unit actually gets to do, which I think is very unique to some of the other units that most agencies operate under, is when we're operating in that resource-driven capacity, our job really is resources. And so we do transport these individuals to different types of substance abuse locations. We take them to shelters. We hold beds at some of the women's shelters. So we do everything we can that's very resource driven. And part of that is we want to build trust. One of the biggest things that the Hope Unit officers' responsibility is building trust with those community members. And that's easily broken if we start to enforce laws while we're there to help somebody. So if we have an individual that's coming to us with substance abuse disorder or some type of issues with alcoholism, and instead we give them punishment as opposed to help or providing them with resources, we're kind of damaging that relationship that we have with the community. And so in order to avoid that, the Ninth Circuit Court has actually made some rulings that while officers are operating in the capacity of community resources or, outreach, they should not be doing enforcement at the same time. So we don't allow our officers to operate in both sides of the world when they're doing that.
Thank you. Do you ever run into problems where you've kind of flipped the switch and you're wearing your other hat?
So we have ran into that for the most part. The officers that are a part of my Hope Unit have amazing communication skills, and I think that's why they were selected. They have to be very, very good communicators. I think that's huge for law enforcement across the board, is we have to learn how to communicate first, and that includes active listening. And I won't say that our profession is perfect, because it's not. We definitely have officers within our profession that turn the listening ears on and off when they should always be on. We should always be listening to our community and our community members when they're talking to us. And so we haven't had, with UPD's Hope Unit, we haven't actually ran into any individuals where we've had issues with that we haven't been able to talk them out of, would probably be the most appropriate way to put it. And that's, I take my hat off to the officers that operate in that capacity, because sometimes it does take a little more patience and a lot more understanding in order to do that. If we're working in an enforcement type of world, if we give somebody a direct order, we expect that to be followed. And so it just takes the right type of officer to do this. It doesn't mean that they all couldn't do it. I think that we've done a really good job in hand picking the officers who just exuberant. I mean, they just show community policing. They're very much community-oriented police officers. It just pours out of their souls, and they're very much about the community and helping community members. And we all are. Just these particular officers just do it in a different way, and they're very passionate about what they're doing. And I think that's what helps make this program so successful. We have had some individuals in a couple of our cleanups that may have needed to kind of put that separate hat on. But in the event that that happens, we typically would call another officer who's on shift. So somebody that's already working in a patrol function, and we would ask them to come over and provide that enforcement. That way the community outreach officer doesn't cross those lines, and we kind of keep that trust where they understand that when we first make contact with them, our job truly is to offer assistance. And you're going to keep hearing me say assistance rather than help. One of the reasons why we do that is we have found out over, and I've worked with community members and different resources across the valley for many, many years. I own and operate my own nonprofit organization that deals with the homeless community. And one of the things that we have found out is they really don't like when officers say the word help. For some reason, it makes it seem like they're either children or they're incapable, or we're minimizing their ability to do things for themselves. And so we really do train all of our officers, but specifically our Hope officers, to use the word assistance. what assistance can we provide you with? What assistance do you require? What assistance do you need? So that way, to them, it's more of an option where they have the choice to choose assistance. Sometimes when we use the word help unknowingly, we unintentionally offend those that we're not trying to offend. And so we definitely try to make sure that we're using specific verbiage and specific phrases. And we train our newer officers as they're coming out of the academy to use those same words and phrases. So that way we're all kind of speaking the same language.
Thank you.
Officer Summerlin, hi. My name's Stacy Shapen. I'm the Director of Advising here.
Hi, Stacy. Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks so much for your information today. It's been really great. I have a question that I want to be sensitive about how I phrase it. There are people obviously who are homeless and in the buildings and using that as like just a place to rest and, you know, be comfortable and out of the weather and all of that stuff. I would much rather interact and have a human dialogue with people rather than just automatically call the police to deal with a situation. But at the same time, I'm reticent to do that because I'm never quite sure if I'm going to interact with somebody who may have a mental illness that gets triggered or something like that. So I'm curious to know kind of what your guidance is or what the expectation is from the university police around those kinds of interactions with us and the homeless population. And what do you recommend as far as those interactions on a regular basis? Should we just call you or what do you think?
So most of our officers are very fluent in our residentially challenged folks. We spend a lot of time in the community. And as all of you work here at UNLV, you probably see them frequenting either your workspaces, your buildings, or in other buildings as you're moving about campus. Most of them, I'd have to be honest with you, most of them are very friendly and open to having a dialogue, like you mentioned, and conversating. But if you're trying to get them resources and it's not something that you're able to provide, we would prefer that you call an officer. And when you're calling in, it's not for us to remove them. I want that to be very clear. We don't actually go to calls for service and remove anybody from buildings. When our officers are responding, whether it's the Hope unit or just an officer that's on shift, our goal is to simply see what type of resources this individual may need. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes the individual may have already been trespassed on campus for one reason or another. Maybe they, had a criminal act previously, or they had an unfortunate and inappropriate contact with law enforcement at an earlier date and time. And so they may not be allowed on campus at that time if they happen to be a trespassed individual. So typically we would prefer that you would call us out so we can make contact with them. We can get them in contact with our Hope team. We can provide them with some resources, specifically one of our resource cards that has some areas, some phone numbers, and then we might be able to kind of build upon that and see what resources this individual may already have or what they may need. And that's where our officers are kind of a little better at judging that and then getting them to either the right resource or getting them in contact with myself or another member of the Hope unit. And it's not necessarily for us to come and remove them from your building. A lot of times just our presence alone makes people uncomfortable. I don't know why. And they'll just move along when they see us coming. I prefer to have that open dialogue and conversation with them as well, but sometimes just the costumes that we wear every day, these lovely police uniforms, tend to make people move along anyway. We do have some individuals that maybe aren't necessarily the most savory of folks, and they tend to be treated, I hate to use the phrase stray cats, but we do have some folks that do treat our homeless individuals and our residentially challenged individuals kind of like they're stray cats and they just want to shoo them along. We prefer not to shoo them along without having somewhere else to go. sleeping and doing those types of things is a natural human function. And so we understand that a lot of them are going to lay down and sleep. And there's plenty of places around campus that are quite beautiful for them to do that in, under a tree, in a grassy area, and we'll tend to see them do that. And most of them aren't a bother to the community. But we do have some that like to shower in some of our restrooms and our lavatories. And so we want to make sure that hygiene is, you know, definitely taken care of, but that might not be the most optimal place for them to do it in. So we do have resources available for those individuals. We do have resources where they can go shower, and also places where they can wash their clothes as well. So if you're comfortable with having one of our officers come out and talk to them, if that's what you prefer, we have no problems doing that. And most of our officers are trained to talk with these individuals and kind of figure out what it is they need. I will say that not all of them want to talk to us, though. That's probably more so than not. Is there are some of them that just don't want to speak with us, and we're okay with that. We'll still show up to the call for service. We still try to offer resources. I can't think of a single time that someone didn't offer resources, but they don't always take them. And sometimes they've already had contact with our HOPE officers, or maybe another officer on campus, so they've already been provided a resource card and they just don't want another one. Most of the time, I will say that if I had to talk to one individual person, that first interaction with them, if they are open to resources, isn't going to happen that first time I talk to them. After that, I would then make contact with that individual again. It's going to take at least 10 times for me to talk to that same individual to make them what we like to call a yes person. And the reason why we call them yes persons, and we try to track the individuals we make contact with using our CAD system, is if I've talked to that same person 10 times, they probably said no to me all 10 times, but that 11th time, I may have been able to just annoy them just enough to at least be open to hearing what resources I have to offer. And I might be able to either get them into a program or figure out what some of their basic needs might be. Sometimes it's just, I don't have a way to get to that location. How can I get there? And we can help with that. Our HOPE officers can transport them, and we have done that in the past. We also have ran into individuals, because this is a very transient community and we have folks that are from all over the states and all over different countries. We've been able to get them in contact with our impact center, which helps facilitate getting folks back home to wherever home may be. So just recently we helped a gentleman get back to the state of Texas where his family was from. And during COVID, he ended up getting stuck out here, and travel was very difficult for him. He lost his job and he didn't have a way to get home. And so we were able to get him in contact with folks from the impact center, and they were able to help facilitate getting him a bus pass back to Texas, and he did make it home to his family. So there's different things that the HOPE unit can do, and different resources that are very available. And some people either don't know or don't want them, or just aren't sure what to do to get them. But there's tons of resources that are available through federal funding and state funding.
Thank you so much. I
Hopefully that
really
answers your
appreciate hearing
question.
that.
Sergeant Summerlin, what about our students? You said affiliates and non-affiliates. Do you find a lot of our students who are housing insecure are in need of your services as well?
So that's a little trickier. When I talk about our affiliates and our non-affiliates are more prevalent within our community. We see them more. It's somebody that maybe you have seen frequent on campus. Our affiliates are people that you're unaware of that need. And for two reasons. One, they either are embarrassed because they don't want their peers to know, or maybe they're a faculty or a staff member and they don't want their colleague to know. We do find that we have quite a few students that have housing insecurity, and we see more of them being grad students than our undergrads. Grad school is very expensive. And so we do see that there's a lot of that. And so when we do that, a lot of times we aren't disclosing their information. We're simply providing resources to an individual who maybe reached out to us and said, I have a friend or a colleague that is experiencing X, Y, or Z. What resources are available? And then we just provide the resources to the friend who then provides it to that individual. Sometimes they don't want to talk to us, and I think there might be somewhat of a stigma around getting in contact with law enforcement. We are definitely trying to change what that looks like and how we interact with our affiliates. But I have heard from students that I've been in contact with that there's an uncertainty when I need resources and I'm calling the police, or I need resources and I really don't want my roommate or my suite mate or, you know, my friends to know. Sometimes with some of the students that we have, it's not necessarily that they don't want anyone to know. Maybe they actually had an unsafe home life. They had some interesting things happening in their home life or where they were living, and they needed to get out of that environment. And because they needed to get out of that environment, it caused some type of homelessness or, you know, challenges with food insecurity. And so we're able to then help get them and connect them to different resources that are available to them that they can utilize without disclosing who they are and kind of outing them in a way. We can do that privately offline. We've had officers that have had special requests. Can you please meet me on this street at this location behind this building? And we've done that. We've met folks off campus, on campus, in different neighborhoods, or they know a specific street. Hey, can you meet me on this street? Because I know nobody lives over here that I know. And we've done that as well. And most of that's to make them feel comfortable, but also to make sure that we're providing the resources that they need and they're comfortable receiving them. And if that means I have to go meet somebody, you know, in the Target shopping center, I will do whatever it takes to meet that individual.
That's really valuable information to know. Thank you.
Of course.
I have another question if I turn off mute. First of all, I've been here for a while. I really miss your mounted police. They were so interesting to have around campus, and it was really kind of a friendly atmosphere with that. The question I have is, I'm not in this business, but would the Hope team, do any of them wear less costumes? I mean, less you know, beefed up costumes when they meet with some of these people, or is that not allowed, et cetera? Because you have to be safe, obviously. You don't want to just come
Right.
plain
So
clothes.
almost all of the officers that operate in the Hope unit, as well as the hot team for Metro, we all still wear all of our gear. And the reason for that is a lot of times we're going into their areas. We spend a lot of time in the washes and a lot of time in back alleys.
Yeah.
And we're kind of inviting ourselves without being invited by them into their home space or what they consider their home. And we do need to make sure that our officers are safe. So although we're not providing enforcement at that time, we still need to make sure that our officers have the equipment and the tools that they need should, heaven forbid, they do need them. I have not heard of any of our officers or Metro's officers actually needing to utilize anything. Most of the time that we're utilizing a tool, it's just our mouths. We're talking to people. And a lot of times we can talk somebody just as quickly as they could talk themselves into a pair of handcuffs, we can talk them out of them. And we try to do that as often as possible. And we realize that there is a lot of mental illness amongst our residentially challenged folks. A lot of them are vets. So we actually have a really good connection with the Veterans Affairs folks that work here in town. And we do connect a lot of the vets to those resources. Some of them are what we like to call resource resistance, or are no people. But we have not actually discussed kind of minimizing what our officers wear, and that's because we frequent their areas. We realize that we're going into their spaces. We do have some officers when we've attended certain town hall meetings or things like this that aren't in this particular forum, where they've asked some of our officers to do what's called dressing down or showing up in civvies, civilian clothes. So we have done that in the past, but our officers are still armed. They're just probably concealing that weapon at that time.
A little less, okay. And do you ever see the mounted police coming back, or is that kind of a dead issue?
You know, it was really expensive when we had the mounted police. The horses are very, very expensive. I would love to see them come back, but I just don't know that it's within the budget to do that because of the cost associated with the horses that we had and how much time it took to actually house them and get them trained and things like that, because they're also considered a partner. So we do have 3 canine officers in our department right now, and all 3 of them have bomb detection dogs. And it's very expensive for them to house those partners. So our canine pups are actually called partners. They're not pets. And they're actually, so when we see them in the hallway, we actually call them partners. They all have names. And they're all females right now. We have all females. We're hoping to get another male pup. But right now we have all 3 female pups, and they're all bomb detection dogs. and they do a fantastic job. But having specialized units like that is very, very costly. It costs the department a lot of money, and it also costs the handler a lot of money, which would be the same thing for our mounted unit, but it would be a lot more because horses are much more expensive than our pups are.
Well, they eat more than puppies.
Oh goodness, yes, they do.
Well, that's great. I was sad to hear that one Springer passed away within the year. I think he was such
Yes, that was
he or
Buster.
she was
Buster
such a
did
great
pass away.
dog to have around.
Oh, he was fantastic. He was awesome to have around. He was really, really good at his job, and everyone absolutely loved him. If you guys haven't met our new pups yet, we have Astra, Macy, and Leia, and they are all overly friendly. Sometimes maybe too friendly because they do like to give lots of kisses, but they're awesome pups to have around, and we like just seeing them around. So we're super excited to have them.
Right.
The black and white Springer passed away?
Yes, that was Buster. He did
Oh.
pass away.
I used to see him every morning out in front of FDH. Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, he had some issues health-wise with seizures, and he lived a long, healthy life, and he did a lot of bomb sweeps for here at UNLV and for different events, and he was really loved all over the valley. Everybody knew who he was.
I've got a question about it's kind of funny, alcohol consumption on campus.
Yeah,
Because
of
I
course.
have seen some of our transient folks drinking beers, whatever, and I saw an interaction between a faculty member and one of our folks on campus. What is our policy on that?
So our policy is quite interesting. So UPD doesn't enforce any policies, regardless of what the policy is, because the state doesn't allow us to enforce policies. We're only allowed to enforce state laws, which are NRSs. So the campus is not a dry campus, which is not interesting. It's not surprising. There's a lot of universities that don't have dry campuses because we have college students that live here in our dorms, but it is still legal to consume alcohol in public, and it is also still legal for those that are under the age of 21. So typically, if we would find someone that is consuming an alcoholic beverage in the presence of an officer, they would be cited for that, regardless if they were homeless or not. However, the only difference and the caveat to that would be is if it was someone who had an issue with alcoholism, we would try to get them into a program rather than citing them. And the reason for that is we realize that giving them a citation, although it makes the behavior stop in that moment, it doesn't stop the behavior from continuing after. And so that really isn't helping them. It would be the same thing like if we arrested somebody. If I arrest somebody for drinking in public, it's not helping them. They're actually probably going to get released from CCDC before I even pull my car out of the garage. And a lot of times we do see that happening. So if it was somebody that we knew had an issue with alcohol, our officers would try to enforce getting them into a program first. And then if need be, then take action with a citation and then possibly trespassing them from the campus. Most of our residentially challenged folks that we do see drinking alcoholic beverages have wised up and they're pouring them into different bottles so they can kind of cover that up and kind of hide that from us. But if you guys come in contact with somebody that you know or you see that is drinking an alcoholic beverage, we would want to make contact with that folks. Whether they're affiliates or non-affiliates, we've actually had contact with some of our students that live on campus that think, well, I live here and on the strip I can walk around with a beer in my hand. Well, no, actually you can't. And surprisingly, a lot of people are shocked to hear that even on the strip, it's actually illegal to walk around with an alcoholic beverage. It's just not something the state enforces because during that strip corridor, it's something that they kind of allow to happen, but only when you're on the strip.
I did not know that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to see, you had mentioned that you had a resource card that you handed out to folks. Is there any way that you could share the information that's on that resource card with those of us in the College of Fine Arts so that we had that information as well? Not that we would, be
No,
handing it out
absolutely.
to everyone, but it may be
Actually
a
share
helpful
the card
resource.
with you all. I'll get it to I'll share the card with the folks that had put this program together for today and get them a copy of it, and then that way they can email it out to all of you. And feel free to use that resource card any way that you see fit, whether it's you come in contact with somebody that might be able to utilize the resources that are on that card, There's also a list of all the crisis centers that are available and around our area, and we partner with a lot of them. So if it's somebody that's in need or experiencing a crisis at that time, that might be useful for them. So I'll make sure I get a copy of the card emailed out. And then if you see any of our officers actually walking around, they can actually give you a stack of them because they all carry them in their pockets and in their patrol cars. We have them everywhere. So we'd be more than happy to share that with you guys.
Awesome, thank you.
That would be fantastic.
Do you guys have any other questions for me or things you want to know about UPD or our units or anything else that I could do to help make your area safe, or things maybe you're seeing around your buildings or in your buildings that might be an area of concern that I can bring up at our next supervisor meeting?
Another idea just came to me. How often do you do patrols around the across the street from Maryland Parkway with our art building and music building?
So we actually we have an interesting way of doing that. Every shift is required to at least frequent all the areas that are off of main campus twice a shift. And that may just be us. You might see us drive through that area, or you might see an officer on the bike. Our bike officers like to bike everywhere. I don't know, like, and they all eat hamburgers, so I don't know what's happening with the hamburger. They maybe need more hamburgers because they're riding so many miles a day. But all of our bike officers love to be able to ride bike all around campus, and they usually come across the street as well. But our bomb detection dogs, when our canine officers are on shift with them, they try to take them and make them as familiar with every building as possible. For the graduate art studio specifically, we about a year ago, we saw that because, you know, our headquarters moved from behind you all, we saw that there was an influx in some of our residentially challenged folks kind of seeing that we had left the area. And so they kind of then took that as a green light to move in. And so we kind of saw that happening. And so that is one of our hotspots that you will actually see us frequently drive by a lot. And we do make contact with the folks that are resting in that area. Sometimes they're just standing out of the elements for a quick minute, but we'll still make contact with them and let them know that this is a place of business. They're more than welcome to walk through this space, but just kind of reminding them not to set up their camps and their tents and things like that. So we spend a lot of time at a lot of the different spots around campus, not just on main campus. You probably see our officers more on the main campus just because there's more of them, but we do hit the Graduate Art Studio and MAB and a lot of NCHE, which is also here on Maryland Parkway. And then we have a lot of places that are off campus, like we have a new building that's out on Durango and 215, so we have to drive out that way as well, and that's the Harry Reid Tech Center. So we spend a lot of time making sure that we do foot patrols in those areas. If at any time you feel that you would like more foot patrol, that's something that we actually add in our briefing notes. So for every shift, we have a 7 a.m. briefing, and then we have a 7 p.m. briefing. The supervisors will pass that information along. I know that MAB is always on there, and so is HFA. So we actually do extra foot patrols in both of those areas, as well as some of our other buildings that we have a couple little hot spots or pockets that we think about or that have been brought to our attention.
Thank you.
Question about the escort service. Is that service viable both on this side of Maryland Parkway and the other side if people wanted someone to walk with them back to campus?
That's a great question. So for on main campus, our escort service is done by our student cadets, which are employed by UPD. And so they would do golf carts and walking on main campus. Anything that's across the street on Maryland Parkway, we don't allow the student cadets to cross over the street. So it would actually be a sworn officer that does that escort. And we do actually do that all hours of the day, 24/7.
Wow.
So 7 days a week, every single time that we are called. The only time it might be slightly delayed, which some of our students, we have some frequent flyers, as I like to call them, that are always needing escorts. And those folks know that they might be slightly delayed if we have an officer that's on a call for service. So if the officer's on a call, they might just be a little later getting to you, but they always show up. So we do actually have a couple folks that we actually walk with as opposed to drive, but then we have others that we drive. The difference is that our officers are allowed to drive across the street and our cadets are not. So if it's someone that needs transport, then our officers would be the one that would take them across the street. But if they just wanted us to walk with them, we absolutely would do that as well.
That's really helpful. Thank you for that information.
Of course.
Sergeant Summerlin, have you seen, since we've been back on campus, how has it been as far as, I mean, we've talked a lot about the housing insecure folks, but how's regular crime been?
Honestly, I think COVID kind of helped taper some of that off. I would like to say that we were very fortunate and blessed in the sense that during a lot of the protests and the riots that our campus was shut down due to COVID. And so that kind of helped taper some of the stuff that was happening across the valley and other areas. And so we didn't see a lot of that, which was nice. Now that campus is back open, we actually don't have an influx in just regular crimes. There's been a couple of hot things that have happened, most of that being like break into vehicles because someone left their vehicle unlocked. They thought they locked it, but they didn't. And so we see some of that happening where we have students reporting that, you know, they came back to their vehicle and they noticed their vehicle was rummaged through. And so we spend a lot of time talking with students about ensuring that you keep your valuables out of sight, that you're locking your vehicle. Because honestly, criminals don't want to have to work hard for what they're doing. So if they can do something easily, if they see they're kind of pulling on handles and they find a vehicle that's been left unsecure, that's an easy target. And so we try to stress that a lot. I actually attend most of the orientations that happen prior to the start of each semester. And then I also am part of Res Life team. So I do all of the orientations for our CAs and our RAs, and we stress the importance of locking their vehicles, making sure they don't have their noses in their cell phones when they're leaving classes and they're aware of their surroundings and things like that. And so kind of like the normal stuff that most parents tell their kids, but now the UPD is telling them as well. And they're adults too. So it's kind of making sure that we do it in a way that's respectable to them and their age group. And then also that they understand that we're here to protect and serve them as well. So I haven't seen much of an influx in crime now that campus is back open. And I think that's just a tribute to the folks that are just around and visible, and you all that are seeing things and calling it in, and our officers that are visible. We are not a lazy police department. I will say that our officers are doing, we're on 12-hour shifts, and we probably spend at least 10 hours of that doing foot patrol. And walking around campus and in and out of buildings. And it still surprises me because I'll walk into a building and it's usually students that say, oh my goodness, what's going on? The police are here. And I'm like, I just work here. I'm just walking through and saying hello and making sure it's safe. But most people think because we're walking through the building, something's going on. And that's not always the case. We're just walking through because that's our job. We want to make sure that we're saying hello to folks, that people see us, because the more that they see us, the more visible we are, the less crime that's happening on campus.
Thank you.
There was a question in chat about do we have to place a request for more officer presence during Art Walk?
I'm sorry,
And
during
you guys
the
are all welcome to it, you know.
Oh, during the art walk. If you would actually like to have more presence during a specific time, say you have a specific event that's going on, that's definitely something we can facilitate. If you just send an email, you can email it to myself or you can email it to Todd Miller. I'll throw his email address here in the chat as well. He's actually the assistant director that's responsible for the UNLV campus. So if you send him an email and just let him know the time, date, and location that you're having these events, we can just let our shift officers know at that time that there's a specific event happening in this location during these hours, and we would like an extra presence available. And we've done that for multiple things across campus. We make sure that we're available we try to make sure we actually stop by all the events too, so we can say hi to folks and then they can see us. And sometimes that's just enough. But if not, we can always make sure that you guys get extra patrols also.
but you're also, everyone in the force is welcome to come participate in Art Walk and see what we do here at the College of Fine Arts.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. I hope to come see that and see what you all do. That'd be fun. We have some new officers, so I'll make sure I send them that way too, because we have a lot of new officers that don't know what all the different colleges across the university does. And so it's really good when you guys have events like this so they can participate and be a part of it and see what the different colleges do and what you guys have to offer our students.
Well, ours is the best college, just to.
Right.
I
Absolutely.
actually have heard that art is really good. So I've heard that the art college is very, very good.
Well, I want to say that I have a preview here, if I can find it, for all of our guests about something that everyone who goes to Art Walk is going to receive. This is a very special group on this call, so I feel that I can do this. But we do have a pretty magnificent flashlight that is going to be given out to everyone who comes, at least up to the first 1,000. And we have attached to it campus safety apps. So we have been working actually with your department. It has the QR code for the app. It talks about best practices, hide your things, lock your car, take your keys. You know, this little card. And, you know, emergency notifications, report a crime tip, request a police escort. And this is how people will download the safety apps if they haven't. So I'm really proud of our college to have been already.
That's fantastic.
1,000 people will get this, the flashlight with the card. We even have more than 1,000, but we were putting some away for
There you
other.
go. Well,
But
there's
anyway.
definitely going to be some people jealous if they don't get one of those.
I'll make sure that every police person on your staff, you know, I'm
you so
accountable
much.
if they don't get one. But
Yeah.
so I think that we must, in order to have had this card, I suspect we've been, you know, Suzette and others who've been, you know, working on the, you know, the management of the Art Walk. Although many people on this call are very important in the Art Walk, and Brackley has been a stalwart in doing the lighting and just helping enormously, as have many people on the call. So yes, we definitely want you to come and enjoy yourself as a guest. Hopefully there'll be no reason you have to, you know, you have to work that night. But we can also we have beautiful printed invitations. I'll make sure that Suzette sends a bunch to you
Oh,
and your
yes, absolutely. Yeah, and we'll make sure that the officers that are on shift during that evening, that they make sure that they stop by and say hello as well.
your presence is going to be
Yeah.
on great flashlight.
Absolutely.
Nancy, do the flashlights change color?
I'm so sorry, Brackley. We should have had you be you are our consultant, but they do have, it says College of Fine Arts. They are very beautiful. They are the university colors, scarlet and gray. And, you know, we worked hard on this. I'm kind of proud, you know.
Incredibly bright.
It's a little thing, but LED.
And LED bright, which is good.
Yes,
You know,
that's
hopefully
fantastic.
they'll last for a long time, make people feel safer. Anyway, I just wanted to say that we've actually been working at, you know, making the flashlight a beacon of safety as well.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I like that.
Yes.
That's a fantastic idea.
Nancy, I am actually taking a handful of those flashlights over to police
Oh.
services tomorrow.
thank you so much, Tammy. I saw you, but I didn't realize you were on the call.
Oh yeah, in here.
I saw you and then I didn't think of it. Well, guess who ordered these? Tammy was, you know, amazing and helped us decide to do this. Tammy, thank you so much. We're so proud of partnering with the campus police. So Tammy, thank you for, you know, also putting those cards on. It's a brilliant idea, I think.
You're welcome.
So do you, Sergeant Summerlin, do you have any questions for us?
None that I can think of off the top of my head right now, but if something pops up, I think I have most of your emails from this call, so I'll be sure to send emails your way.
Well, you know, I just want to say that it's been such a joy to get to know you and to hear the really caring attention you give to our campus and the people who are on campus, whether they're affiliates or not, you know, and, you know, how thoughtful you've been to try to help people. I think that means a lot to all of us.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
To try to ascertain what resources will be helpful to each individual. That's really, I think, a terrific direction. And
Yeah,
so,
I tried to make sure that our younger officers, not necessarily age, but years on service, that they understand the reason why they got into law enforcement in the first place. And it's very easy to kind of get away from that. And so we stress that frequently with them to remind them of their why. And most of the time they got in it to help people and be a beacon to our community. And so they have to start somewhere, and this is the perfect place to start.
well, others of you chime in, but I just want to say it's been incredibly informative. And most importantly, I feel like we've established the next step in our colleagueship together, so we feel, I think any of us would feel comfortable calling upon you or Officer Garcia or one of your colleagues to ask questions and to have, further the mutual goal we have about, making our campus safe for all of us, and also having empathy and compassion for everyone on campus.
Oh, absolutely. Please don't hesitate to reach out if I could ever be a resource to any of you all or to help and assist in any way, whether it's to answer a question or maybe you weren't unable to get in contact with someone else. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd love to assist any way I could.
And we look forward to seeing you on November 5th.
Yes.
Absolutely.
5 to 9 p.m. Thank you, Berkeley, and others.
Okay.
for-
Thank you
Absolutely.
so much for coming.
Thank
Yes.
you.
All right.
Thank you.